Well, what a freaking chapter. What up guys, Gozen here for AnimeUproar, and today we are going to be talking about chapter 114 of Attack on Titan. Holy cow, this series is moving as fast as the 7 Deadly Sins series at the moment, and I don't know if I can handle so much insanity, but let's give it a shot. Before we get into the video, remember to hit that like button and subscribe if you want more Attack on Titan content, and let me know what you thought about the chapter in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. Feel free to leave suggestions for future videos you would like to see as well. Now, without further ado, we are entering spoiler territory. You've been warned. So this chapter has completely changed everything. It has completely reversed the situation we were left at last chapter, and it has given us more information about Zeke and his philosophy and end goal. Zeke, ever since we first met the Beast Titan, has always been shrouded in mystery, and now we got some much needed backstory about this man. We finally learn not only what he's planning, but how he came to that conclusion. So, rewind to Zeke's childhood. His parents, Grisha and Dina Fritz, were even more horrible to him than I imagined. In a lot of ways, this chapter tries to justify Zeke's behavior by showing us his difficult childhood, but whether it succeeds in getting us to empathize with him, his viewpoint, and his actions is a whole nother story. Zeke was constantly being told what to do and pressured as a child. Everyone told him different things. We know that Grisha was secretly an Eldian restorationist, and that he pretended to be a good self-hating Eldian in the eyes of the Marleyans, but in reality he hated Marley and wanted to restore the glory of Eldia. He realized that in order to do this, he would need to get Zeke in the warrior program. So he placed a lot of pressure on his son, Zeke, who from the looks of it had no natural talent and was always lagging behind the other candidates. Grisha told Zeke, and I quote, "You'll be the one to save us all." Obviously, this is a huge burden to place on a little child, and we really see in this chapter that Grisha was a bad father, who never prioritized Zeke's own feelings. While his parents were telling him one thing, the rest of society, his grandparents and the Marleyans, were telling him something completely different. He was a child at this time, so let's not underestimate the psychological toll that being a double agent would have on him, not to mention the physical toll of very hard training that warrior candidates had to undergo. As his grandpa also points out at one point, Zeke is feeling lonely. His mother and father are not treating him like a loved child at all, but simply as a tool to accomplish their objectives. We see Zeke lying to his grandfather that his parents were teaching the same history Marley is teaching in school, that Eldians did horrible things against Marleyans that they had to atone for. Grisha in fact completely disagrees that Eldians did anything wrong, which is a view on the other extreme. Grisha at this point views Ymir as infallible and thinks that she would never allow Eldians to do anything wrong or cruel. While Marley views Eldians as devils, Grisha views them more like innocent angels who have been horribly wronged. Neither version of history is likely the truth, but Zeke is constantly being told and pressured to believe these conflicting stories. Later, his grandpa asks him if he wants to become a warrior and fight for Marley, and although Zeke's expression clearly shows that it's not what he wants at this point, he says, "Yeah, I want to become a warrior." He is doing something he doesn't want to do, including lying to others, all for the sake of his parents, who are terribly neglecting his own needs and desires. Zeke is eventually put on the spot for his subpar performance in the warrior program, and he is told that he has no motivation and that he should leave. However, the previous owner of the Beast Titan, who we'll call Mr. X for short, takes a liking to Zeke. They play baseball together and bond. As we'll later learn, Zeke fills in for the son that Mr. X lost, and Mr. X fills the role of a proper father figure that Zeke's been craving for, one who will enjoy simply spending time with him, talking, and throwing a ball around. This is emphasized by the placement of panels in the manga. In the top panels, we see Zeke getting complimented by Mr. X and he lights up. We get a nice panel of them throwing the baseball around. This is directly contrasted to a panel beneath where Zeke comes home and his father has no time for him. He wants to talk to his dad, but his dad interrupts him and tells him that he'll listen to him later. This is a repeating pattern in their relationship. Grisha is always prioritizing the Eldian restorationists over his son. It is revealed that for the Eldian Restorationists to succeed, Zeke has to become a warrior. The owl said that for him to become the successor of a Titan, he needs to keep his grades up, but he's been lagging behind. So Grisha takes his son and puts all of the hopes of the Eldian Restorationists on his tiny shoulders. To make sure he becomes a warrior, they leave him in the Marleyan warrior program full time. Thus, any kind of attention he might have been getting from his parents up to this point disappears. He's left all alone. Luckily for him, Mr. X is there to keep him from being utterly alone and depressed. They continue to play ball and talk. Mr. X reveals that he is not a conventionally brainwashed warrior. He is a Titan researcher and he thinks it's ridiculous that there is a dispute and hatred over Titans rather than appreciation. He doesn't want Zeke to become a warrior because it would mean shortening his life, and he knows that Zeke doesn't want to become a warrior. He actually cares about Zeke's life and feelings, unlike Grisha, who just wants him to sacrifice himself for the Eldian cause. Then one day, Zeke overhears the conversation where the Marleyans reveal that they are close to catching the Eldian Restorationists. Then we get a flashback of one time Zeke tried to talk with his father, who lost his sister because they went beyond the walls of the internment zone without permission. Zeke is under so much pressure that his stomach hurts too much for him to eat. Zeke questions at the dinner table if to achieve the goal of the Eldian Restorationists, his parents are okay with him ending up dead like Aunt Faye. And Grisha freaks out. He slams the table in anger and screams at the young Zeke, and tears appear in the frightened child's eyes. He begs his parents not to do dangerous things anymore. He warns them that they'll be sent to Paradise Island and be turned into Titans. Grisha will not even entertain the idea. He says that they must fight so that they can take back their strong Eldia from Marley and win back from them all of their rights. Grisha says that it is to save people like Faye that they need to stand against Marley. Zeke then mentions something he heard from his grandpa, suggesting that it was because Grisha wanted to go outside of the walls and acted against the rules of Marley that Faye was killed by a Marleyan officer. We have here two conflicting philosophies. One is that Eldians should go about living their lives, enjoy them as much as possible, and hope that Marleyans will leave them alone if they follow their rules. This is the philosophy of Zeke's grandparents that Zeke seems to be leaning towards at this point himself. Grisha's philosophy, which he is trying to force onto his son, is that it is better to die fighting than live in such unjust conditions. He feels that not being free is worse than death. So he is willing to do anything, including sacrifice his son, in an attempt to get what he views as justice and freedom for the Eldian people. Later, Mr. X finds Zeke crying because he knows that the Marleyans will discover the truth behind him and his parents soon. When Mr. X finds out that his parents are restorationists, and that it is only a matter of time before they are caught, you can see that he is deeply troubled by the news. He doesn't want to lose Zeke, who he has come to view as his own son. He doesn't want a repeat of what happened to his own child. Zeke, despite the fact that he thinks he is going to be turned into a Titan, thanks Mr. X for playing catch with him. He says he'll remember that, even if he turns into a Titan. It is clear that the game of catch represents so much more. Mr. X has been more of a father to Zeke than Grisha, and realizing how much he's meant to Zeke makes Mr. X's eyes begin to water. He's not able to accept the fact that his new son will be turned into a Titan, so he tells Zeke to accuse his parents. Zeke says he can't do it, but Mr. X says he's been treated horribly by his parents, which is true enough as we've seen. They've been exposing a 7-year-old and his grandpa and grandma to a life-threatening situation against their will. He tells Zeke that they selfishly expected so much from Zeke, selfishly abandoned him, while never really thinking about him at all. So Zeke had to even be talked into exposing his parents. He was told to do so by one of the few people who were nice to him in his life. Mr. X convinced him that his parents never loved him, and that if he exposed them, he could at least save himself and his grandparents. Now the question is, can we really judge Zeke for his actions? First off, he was 7 years old. His parents never cared about how he felt. He told them to stop. They knew he didn't want to be involved, and they still forced him to take on the burden of the Eldian Restorationists. After all this, he continued to go along with his parents' wishes, risking his life all the while. He was ready to die for them. However, Mr. X, who was more of a father figure to him than Grisha, convinced him that he should accuse his parents who treated him horribly. Not just because they didn't love him, but because he could save himself and his grandparents. Otherwise, they would have all died, including his grandparents who were completely opposed to the actions of his father. Thus, can you blame Zeke for listening to the words of Mr. X, who cared for him like a father after Grisha abandoned him? I don't think so. If Grisha wanted to sacrifice his own life for his philosophy, that's one thing, but forcing his 7-year-old child to risk his own life against his will was wrong. Grisha treated his 7-year-old child as a tool, while largely ignoring him, his feelings, and his well-being. As the chapter goes on, we see an older Zeke playing catch with Mr. X. Mr. X's time as the Beast Titan user is quickly coming to a close. Ymir's curse is kicking in. Nevertheless, he gives us some interesting information he's discovered about the Founding Titan's ability to manipulate memories. He says, rather than manipulating memories, the Founding Titan power can change the composition of the bodies of Eldians. He tells a story about when a disease broke out, but the subjects of Ymir were fine because the holder of the Founding Titan changed their composition so that they would defeat the disease. He says all descendants of Ymir are like one part of the Founding Titan's body. Then Zeke wonders if one could use this power to ensure that Ymir's descendants cannot bear babies. Then, what we figure out is Zeke's new philosophy, which is different from both that of his grandfather and father. His grandfather thought you should make the most out of life while not rocking the boat and fighting for better conditions. Grisha felt that the caged and cruel life Eldians lived was so bad that he had to do everything in his power, even if it meant his death and the death of his loved ones, to try and create a better world for the Eldians. Zeke, however, believes that all Eldians who are born are fated to suffer and to cause suffering to other humans. Thus, he comes to the conclusion that not being born is preferable to living as an Eldian in this world. Then, Mr. X reveals his own past, how he had kept the fact that he was Eldian from his wife, how she found out and then killed herself and her child, Mr. X's son, who it seems also liked baseball. Then Mr. X became a warrior, because it was a luxurious way of killing himself. It seems clear that despite the fun he's had with Zeke, Mr. X agrees that he would have been better off not being born. The pain he went through was too strong. Then, Zeke tells him that he'll inherit the Beast Titan, but not for Marley's sake. He'll get the Founding Titan, take it away from Marley, and he'll try to save the world. He says he'll free the world from the fear of Titans and Eldians from their suffering. His belief this whole time was that the only possible salvation is Eldia's euthanasia. He wants to use the Founding Titan's power to kill all Eldians. He thinks that by doing so, he is doing them a favor. He is relieving their suffering, which explains why he was able to kill Eldian soldiers without giving it a second thought in the past. He likely plans to exterminate the whole Eldian race, including the Titans, so that no nation, including Marley and Eldia, will ever be able to use them as tools of war again. Levi hates Zeke for killing his comrades, while Zeke believes he saved Levi's comrades from a cruel world. They view dying in a completely different light because of their clashing paradigms. Then we see Zeke cause an explosion, and the manga says the merciful man takes an Eldian's life away. In the previous chapter, Levi explained that the Thunder Spear's fuse was connected to a wire that's been placed around Zeke's neck. Levi tells him if you move recklessly, it'll detonate from your abdomen. You'll probably end up in 2 pieces to say the least. Little did Levi know at the time that Zeke views death as a blessing. So that's where we're at. Is Zeke really dead? Does he have knowledge or reason to believe that Eren will find a way to carry out his plan without him? Is Levi dead? Was the plan for Zeke to take out Levi all along because he would be the biggest threat to their plan? Let me know what you guys think of this huge turn of events. We might have just lost the most OP, cool, and popular character in Attack on Titan. We finally know what Zeke's master plan is, and it could be exactly what Eren wants to do. What do you guys think of Zeke's philosophy? What do you think of Zeke? Is he a monster? Is he at fault? Or is he the product of his upbringing? I gotta admit, I'm personally disappointed that this was Zeke's plan all along. I consider myself a positive person, an optimist, kind of like most shonen main characters, like Asta, Naruto, and Luffy. However, Zeke and likely Eren seem to be pessimists. They believe that the best thing for Eldians and the world is the death of all Eldians. I disagree. Besides, Zeke shouldn't be allowed to make a decision for all Eldians. He's making the exact same mistake that his father did, but on a larger scale. His father made decisions for him, and now Zeke wants to make decisions for all Eldians because he thinks it is what is best for them and the whole world. I have huge problems with this, but let me know what you think about all this madness. Anyways, that's it for today's video. Thank you for watching. Make sure to Warhammer smash that like button if you enjoyed the video. If you haven't, don't forget to subscribe and ring that magic YouTube bell for more AOT content. For extra content, you can follow us on Instagram and Twitter at AnimeUproar, where we are posting and interacting with you guys every day. And until next time, see you, Space Cowboys.